Hello and welcome to episode 202 of the Podiatry Business Podcast. So today's podcast is titled, Are More Clinic Locations Actually Killing Your Profits? So if you've ever thought more locations is going to give you more revenue and therefore more profit, well then this is the episode that you should be listening to. What I'm going to cover and hopefully what you learn is that why more locations can actually reduce your profit and can cause you a bigger headache than you ever had before. What's the difference between scaling outward versus upward? When a second site makes sense and when it doesn't. How to evaluate a small clinic opportunities using CapEx, OpEx, growth plans, etc. And what to do if you already have multiple sites and you're listening to this. And lastly, I'm also going to talk about monthly P&L reviews and how you should be using them for something like this and a per room model that you might consider looking at and that I would recommend. But ultimately what I want you to do is I want you to think that you don't have to build a chain of small clinics that drain you. You can build one profitable clinic model and then you can repeat that business. Now where this is coming from is I recently had a conversation with a clinic owner who had multiple locations, and on paper it sounded impressive, quite big turnover. But when we looked at it closer, we could see that each clinic was really only one or two treatment rooms, and that clinic actually wasn't making that much profit at all when it came to it. And that's where the trap is for a lot of people. More sites can actually mean more headaches. They can mean more overheads, and very often actually leads to you having less profit than if you hadn't done those more sites. Now what I'm going to do today in this podcast, I'm going to break it down to two scenarios. One is you're considering maybe of expanding, maybe a small clinic opportunity landed in your lap. We see this quite a lot. Or maybe you already have multiple small sites and you're feeling the squeeze. So clinic owners will come to me, they'll have a number of small clinics and they'll say, listen, I have all these clinics, all this turnover, but I don't see you making any profit. What is going on? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that actually there's probably a smarter way to scale, which is to build one strong, profitable clinic first, then repeat that model one clinic at a time. And where this is coming from is something I've mentioned before, where a new project I have started with some private equity partners where we're going to be buying and scaling clinics. So we're talking to a lot of clinic owners about taking their clinics over, about buying their clinics. And let's talk about two simple setups. So the first one is for if you have multiple small clinics, let's say 4 small clinics, so you might have 4 locations, 1 to 2 rooms in each. What this means is that you end up with more rent agreements, more reception coverage, more admin team costs, more utilities, etc., and it's more complex to manage versus one larger clinic. So you got one location, one place to go to with more rooms, say 6 rooms. Instead of having 4 locations with 1 or 2 rooms, you've got one front desk team, you've got one rent bill, you've got one set of systems, one set of bills, and it's much easier for you to manage the capacity of everything. It's just a lot simpler. So the key here is that profit is not actually about how many locations you have. In a lot of cases, that's about ego. Okay, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, because we think, well, if I have more clinics, surely I'm doing better. Profit is about how efficiently you can turn your capacity in your business. Capacity, I mean by rooms and so on, and I'll get into that, into revenue without your overheads increasing to the point where actually it's not profitable at the end of it. So what often happens is small clinics will look cheap to open or buy, but they will come with that hidden cost. You'll have duplicate overheads. You'll have to dilute your leadership focus. And if you haven't got your business running, really well without you having to do a lot of clinical work, that's absolutely hard to do. It's very difficult for you to stay the leader. It becomes diluted. It significantly increases the admin complexity. So having 2 clinics doesn't double your complexity of running the business. It creates more than double, and it gives you more points of failure. And what can happen is one clinic can pull down the other clinic. So if each site is too small to properly carry itself, to carry its overhead, what you'll end up with, as in this case, is you'll end up with a business that looks quite big on paper, but actually is quite small, is not making money, and is not really worth the effort that's been put into it. Okay, so let's talk about two scenarios. So scenario one is that you are at a point and you're considering expanding, you're doing well, and an opportunity comes up to take on another small clinic. So maybe the clinics come along and you're thinking, that's pretty cheap, I could do that. Or maybe a local physio or doctor or dentist, whatever, has a space and says to you, listen, would you open here? And you know that you've got work here, so on and so forth. So here's the question that you have to ask yourself before you say yes. And that is, should I expand outward, which is more clinics, or should I expand upward, which is, should I make my own clinic bigger? And in most cases, the smartest move will be to build a bigger clinic or a bigger business in your current site first. It doesn't mean you can't have more than one site. With this new enterprise, Stride MSK, we're going to have multiple sites, so 50, 60, 70 clinics over the next 5-6 years. So you absolutely can do it, but you've got to make sure that your first one is doing really well before you start to do this. Because when you build a bigger current site, what you already have is you have a brand that people trust, you have a patient base, you have your team, you have your systems, and you have that rhythm of running that business. Whereas when you start to do that more than once, that's not actually going to happen. So then when you add capacity to that existing clinic, it's usually far more profitable than adding a whole new set of overheads somewhere else. So you already are paying the rent, you're already paying the admin team, you're already paying the marketing, etc., etc. So for you to increase the capacity, maybe add in new services, maybe open up another room, it's not going to cost you anywhere near as much to do so or to run it as it would be to do it in another location, a second location. So before you open location 2, you have to ask yourself, can I add more rooms to my current location? Can I add more hours into that current location? Maybe what I need to do is open for longer hours every day. Maybe I can improve the utilization of every single room. Maybe I can make it more efficient, more productive. Can I increase the average revenue that I'm charging per patient in the clinic as is? And if you can, then you'll probably find in almost all cases that your current clinic can be significantly improved and can boost the profit to the point where it would be better and smarter decision than would be taking on that small 1 or 2 room clinic, wherever that happens to be. And once you've done that, once you've built this proper clinic and you've absolutely maximized it and optimized it, then you can then start to copy and paste that into other locations. So if you are going to open or maybe buying or considering buying that second site, I would strongly advise that you only do it if you can see a clear path to scale it to at least 4 rooms and beyond. Okay? Because what will happen is 1 to 2 rooms will rarely give you enough capacity to cover the expenses that's going to come with that second location. And if a small opportunity comes along, don't ask, can I afford it? Ask yourself, is this the smart move for me? It could be that the smart move is actually putting the amount of time and effort that you would into the second location into your first and making it much bigger and much more optimized, is probably the way I would put that. So what you have to do is, if you're considering that second location, is ask yourself, can I make it 4 rooms plus? What's it going to cost me? So work out the growth plan, work out the numbers. And what you need to work to map out, and I do this with my clients who are having this consideration, is what's the capex? Capex basically means what's the capital expenditure, as in what's it going to cost me to put in walls, floors, sterilizer, and so on. You get the gist. What's my OPEX? OPEX is operational expenditure, so it's like ongoing expenditure, like your rent, the wages to get the staff to come and work there, maybe your bills, etc., etc. What's my marketing budget? What do I need to have in place with regards to marketing so that I have enough patients coming in to fill those rooms? You need to make sure that you know your timeline. How many months or weeks or whatever is it going to take to break even? What is my break even? And how am I going to get there? And then you need to be thinking about your staffing. Who's going to run it day to day? Because if you have a second location, you need to have staff to do that. Whereas you already have staff in your first location, you don't need to worry about that. So if you can't clearly see the path to doing that, I would suggest you don't do that deal, at least until you've done that, or at least until you've got someone to help you to work through those numbers, something like what. That's what we do in More Practice Profits. Because what you need to remember is cheap clinics are cheap for a reason. Okay, so that's scenario 2, you're considering doing more locations. Or scenario 1, I should say. Scenario 2 is that you're listening to this and I've already described your business, that you already have multiple small sites that are pretty small. Maybe you've got 2-3 sites, whatever, and they're 1, maybe 2 rooms across. And what you're probably noticing is that your admin wages are quite high, that your rent is high, that you're constantly having to maybe firefight the business, that you feel busy, but the bank balance doesn't really reflect that. And this is where you need a deep dive into this to investigate it. So how do you do this deep dive investigation into whether you're making the right decisions with your multiple small clinics? So step 1 is you need to stop guessing. You need to get the truth from the numbers in your business. So you need to look at each site and you need to have a look and see what is the revenue per site, what's the profit per site, what's the profit per room, not just per site, what's the utilization, how full is each room, and what is it costing you to run this site. And then you need to make sure that you're doing this on a monthly basis. Once you have this, then step 2 is you need to consider, should you consolidate? So that can even mean closing sites. This is the part that I see most clinic owners avoid because they feel like it's going backwards. They feel like emotionally they've invested in opening the second clinic or third clinic or whatever, and they probably know at the very back of their mind that this is the right thing to do, this isn't working. But they don't want to actually admit it, and that's cool, I get that. I have done this. I have closed clinics because I knew this wasn't going to work, and actually it ended up being the most profitable decisions I've made. And I've had clients do the same thing. In one particular case, a client with 3 clinics, we closed one of them pretty quickly, and they were within weeks more profitable than they were running around the 3 clinics. So if you have a site that you think of maybe is draining your time, is not you can't really grow beyond 1, maybe 2 rooms, that the profitability is just too thin, you should at least consider closing it. Maybe what you can do is you can merge it with a stronger site, and you can relocate your patients and your staff if it's all done correctly, if it's handled well. And we have experience of helping clients do this. Sometimes fewer locations is actually what unlocks, and I've seen it consistently, and unlocks higher profitability, gives you a better culture and more consistency inside in your clinic and with your team, and for you as the owner, it gives you a lot less stress. Okay, so step 3, if you do keep the clinics, if you or whatever ones you've left, and you want to try and then optimize them to, in my experience, 4 and beyond rooms. So the reason for that is by expanding physical space, adding rooms, adding clinicians, improving patient flow, running proper marketing, what it's going to do is it's going to improve and drive your turnover relative to your costs, because your costs are going to be fairly flat at this point, other than maybe marketing and staffing as they come on. And the goal really for each location is that each single unit not only is able to pay for itself, but it generates enough profit beyond that on its own to justify the effort that you're having to put into it. That it's not just this tiny little outpost that you've bought and you feel I should keep it going almost on life support month by month. This is something you should be considering. So what I want you to take away from this episode is, number 1, you need to do a monthly profit and loss. And you need to take action on what you see in the profit and loss. And I've talked about this before on other podcasts. If you have multiple locations, what you need to be doing is you need to then divide that profit and loss per location. So you could find, for example, you've got 3 clinics and you're making 20,000 profit over the 3 clinics. But actually, one of them is making you 16,000 and the other 2 are making you 4. And you would know that if you close the other 2, and put all of the effort into the one you have and optimize that actually you could get that from 20 to 30 and so on. So you want to make sure you're doing this on a monthly basis, not on a quarterly basis, not when you can fit it in. It is of vital importance that you do a P&L. Because when you're running multiple sites, it becomes very complex, and small inefficiencies can make a massive difference to the business. And what it does is, by doing it on a monthly basis, it allows you to spot these problems early. It allows you to cut any fat that is in the cost that shouldn't be there. Adjust staffing, fix your pricing, and so on. But most importantly, what it does is it allows you to make your decisions based on the numbers, based on the truth, not on emotion. Because we are emotional beings. We put a lot of time and effort into our clinic. We look at them as our baby. Of course we do. I do the same at my business. But we have to look at the numbers and make cold, hard decisions based on that. If this is not working, what am I going to do? Am I going to expand on it, or am I going to cut my losses and move on? Second thing I want you to take away from this is that you start maybe looking at your business on a per room model. So instead of thinking how many locations do I have, start thinking how many rooms do I have and how profitable can I make each room. Because really your rooms is what drives capacity, and capacity is what allows you to see patients and what drives profitability. So if you have a clinic that you can make into 6 rooms in one location, that is going to be a significantly higher business than one that has 2 rooms in each of 3 locations. And it's a lot less hassle for you. So start looking at it from that perspective. So when you have this model done, what you can do then is you can then start to replicate this model in more than one location, if that's what you want. If it's not what you want, if you just want to have one location and have it profitable and give you a great life, that's cool too. But if you're thinking, I want to have more clinics, I want to have more location, that's fine. But make sure that it isn't just micro clinics that are not actually giving you the return that you're looking for. So if you're listening to this and any of this is ringing a bell with you, it's resonating, and if you're thinking maybe about expanding your clinic, or if you're already spread across multiple sites and you're thinking this isn't really working for me, then your next steps are look at your numbers monthly, break the business down per room, and decide whether you should build bigger where you are, consolidate and optimize. And if you want help with any of this, this is what we do. This is what I do and my team does in More Practice Profits. Whether it's growing a growth plan for a second side, or you want to do a deep dive on your multiple sites and figure out what do I need to change, etc., then your next step then is just reach out to us. Go to morepracticeprofits.com and just reach out to us, and we will get on to you and we'll talk through what your next steps. So until next time, this is Lorcan signing out from the Podiatry Business Podcast.